Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm ZS Caravallo from ZK Research, and here in Melbourne at Cisco Live APJC. I just watched the keynote, attended some customer sessions, did a tour of the world of solutions, and I'm going to be joined by Dave West, who's president of Cisco for this region, as well as Tom Gillis, who's in charge of engineering for the security team. And so let's start with the topic that everyone always talks about, which is AI, right? You can't really go to an event. It was a big theme in the keynotes. But Dave, you talked to a lot of customers. In this region in particular, what's going on with AI? Are customers ready for it right now?
I think customers are trying to still determine what the use cases are and what the value is. How does it make them more productive? How does it save them money? How do they drive better outcomes and experiences for their customers? So they're sort of still getting ready. I think we just did a APJC AI readiness study. And the study showed us that 15% are ready to go overall in the APJC region. 86% said that if they're not prepared for AI in the next 18 months, then their businesses could be in some jeopardy.
So I'm not an analyst, but I would conclude from that, we got work to do.
We have work to do.
Yeah.
You're the analyst.
Yeah. No, it's, and that's not dissimilar to what you see in other parts of the globe. I think everyone has AI on the mind right now. I think one of the pressure points for IT leaders is their boards and their business leaders are coming to them and saying, we have to have an AI strategy. Although not really sure what that means. They just know that there's a lot of pressure to do AI things. And I think right now you're right. We are at a point where we're trying to figure it out. One of the areas where it can have a lot of impact, though, is I think in IT operations, specifically the network. And so I recently just did a survey in partnership with the Cube Research, and we asked the question, how important is your network compared to 2 years ago to your business operations? And 93% said more important, which isn't a big surprise. Yep. Now, at the same time, though, 80% said it's more complex. And so you think of those two diverging paths, more complicated but more important. And I think a lot of companies are looking for AI to help close that gap. And so, Dave, talk about what, in the context of networking, especially in a world that's been increasingly all wireless, how is Cisco infusing AI into its networking products to help simplify?
I think everyone's looking for what does AI ops do to make the environment more manageable, easier to orchestrate, easier to automate, drive rich services and policy. So the idea is, and as we just announced Wi-Fi 7, is to create a new level of orchestration management, allow you to use AI to manage the Wi-Fi spectrum much more smart, to be able to see anomalies and then change things and adapt it based off of the guidance that AI gives you. Customers can have a better experience down the road, and that's exactly what we're doing with our Wi-Fi 7 announcement.
Yeah, and so my take on that announcement too is it wasn't just speed upgrade, right? This isn't going from 6.5 to 7 and everything stays the same. A big part of that was operational.
Yeah, absolutely. It's around how do you bring together our licensing structure? How do you make management and orchestration easier? How do you use machine learning and AI to manage spectrum better, to get a better experience from your Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
The vast majority of trouble tickets associated with user can't connect, it's Wi-Fi. You know, the RF is complicated, and so we're building diagnostics in addition to these robust multi-radio solutions that is going to, I think, take a huge step forward in delivering a great end user experience. And you know, Dave, I was listening to your commentary. I'm going to predict that in the next 12 months, the AI automation that we're going to deliver from Cisco, if you look at what's happening in networking today, the ASICs that we make in our switches, these things never fail. They just run and run and run for for a decade. They run and run and run. Where network outages come from is either misconfiguration or misunderstanding of the configuration. We're going to drive that number to zero in the next 12 months, not someday over the horizon, right? Like this stuff is happening really fast.
Now, Tom, you since you are so close, you are the security business in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Talk about what's going on with Splunk and the integration there and how it's transforming the Cisco security business here.
Yeah, I think there are amazing opportunities where Cisco plus Splunk can unlock totally new classes of telemetry that today aren't examined, right? Think about the whole principle of zero trust says, assume the endpoint is already compromised. So assume the bad guys are in. The name of the game in security is identifying and stopping lateral movement. Where does lateral movement happen? in the network. But the vast majority of that data goes unobserved because it's 100 or maybe even 1,000 times more data that's ingested today. And so as we think about the integration with Splunk, there are near-term things that we're already doing to make the observation of the infrastructure more efficient. So these things called technical add-ons, that like the tools that you use to pull telemetry in, those are already released. Then there's like medium-term things we're doing to do smarter, more intelligent harvesting the data. And the long-term is, instead of moving data into the analytics, we want to move the analytics closer to the data. That's a hard problem to solve, but really Cisco plus Splunk is the only company in the world that can solve it. So lots to like there.
Yeah, and do you think we're at a point now, as long as I've been an analyst, which is the better part of 25 years, we've talked about the shift of bringing networking and security together, and it really hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And today, though, I'm sensing more and more, partially driven by AI, partially driven by cloud, partially driven by mobile. It just, a lot of things are coming together, and it looks like that's actually happening now. Are you seeing that?
There's three things that are new and different that are accelerating it. The first is these advances in silicon. So these chips that are called DPUs, data processing units, that is a little tiny baby firewall on a chip. And they come from AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA. We're able to take that capability, put it into servers, and more interestingly, putting it into the fabric of the network itself. And that's going to enable distributed security in the network foundation, unlike anything that was able to be done before. The second is the AI stuff you were talking about, right? How do you manage 1 million little tiny baby firewalls? Well, you don't manage them the way you manage traditional systems. And then the third is advances in modern operating systems. This thing is kind of technical, but it's called eBPF, Extended Berkeley Packet Filter. And this is isovalent. Remember the acquisition that we did more than a year ago? I would argue that interface in Linux and increasingly in Windows, that is the future of networking in a cloud world where you can't touch the physical infrastructure. eBPF lets us get in and do what we do. Those three components together are letting us bring security and networking together in a way that hasn't been possible until now.
I think the other aspect of this, and you touched upon this on the silicon side with Silicon One, to me it's an underappreciated aspect of what makes Cisco unique.
I 100% agree.
Because there's a lot of things best done in silicon.
Yep.
Packet processing, for example.
Yep.
There's lots of things you can do in software, and I think sometimes, and perhaps as an analyst, we're guilty of this, where we swing the pendulum so far one way.
Yeah.
Everything's moving to software, everything's moving to cloud, but the right architecture actually is a combination of hardware, software, silicon.
Yeah, and I think the reason Silicon One is special is that when you look at what's happening with AI, all the advances you talked about, explosive capabilities, the chips that power that AI stuff, these GPUs, they are taking these leaps forward in their ability to swizzle data. Something's got to get the data in and out of those devices. That's the network. So we need to be faster than the most cutting edge processing elements in the infrastructure. That is not easy to do, and that's Cisco's core competence.
And I would say that you can't talk platforms unless you're talking hardware, software, and services together. And going back to the security and networking portion of what Tom talked about, we don't just talk networking anymore. We talk secure networking because segmentation needs to be a part of the network. Policy needs to be a part of the network. Enforcement needs to be part of the network. You need visibility across every port that's in the network, and you have to be able to do it at speeds and performance that make sure that you can meet the demands of your workforce.
Well, and this is where AI helps. When I think about what Zero Trust is, it's a complete flipping of the whole construct of networking, right? You think of the original idea of the internet is everything talks to everything, which is why it's so fast. But the downside is everything talks to everything. Right? And so Zero Trust dictates that nothing can talk to anything unless explicitly allowed. That's great in concept, very hard to scale if you don't use some kind of automation tools.
Correct.
What are customers most excited about with working with you now?
Integration across the portfolio. Not looking at each component by itself, but beginning to integrate and looking end to end and making sure that we're delivering that one Cisco experience to our customers. I think more than anything else, that is most exciting. The idea that we're going to bring security and networking together pervasively, secure networking, secure data center, secure hybrid cloud. The threat landscape is incredibly sophisticated, incredibly difficult to deal with. The work that we're doing with areas like Hypershield and other security defense mechanisms, I think are game changers in the industry, and our customers are recognizing that. And then the last piece that's super exciting for them is all the work we're doing around AI, not just generative AI across all of our capabilities, but truly building that next generation AI infrastructure, AI pods, what we're doing around next generation servers, how we're building, the infrastructure that will power the data centers for tomorrow and help our customers be successful as they begin to roll out their own learning models, do inference, and figure out how they really build new productivity models for their business with AI. And so they're very excited about what Cisco. And then the last piece of this is what Tom talked about, is digital resilience.
Yeah.
How we are bringing everything that we do under a digital resilience umbrella so that we can do anomaly detection, that we can figure out where there may be faults and things that need to be addressed
And fix them.
across the entire enterprise, not just one
Yep.
piece of the enterprise. They're incredibly excited about that.
If I can just pick up on that, and Zayas, you must be seeing this too. These AI workloads, it is driving a renaissance in the data center. The amount of change, the amount of innovation that's happening in data center infrastructure, we haven't seen that in a decade.
Now, Tom, I want to finish on you. And Dave mentioned Hypershield.
Yeah.
It's been in customer betas.
Yes.
What's the feedback been like?
Yeah, Hypershield is still young, right? It's a baby, but I say if you've ever watched Game of Thrones, it's a baby dragon, right? This thing is transformative. It is I know this is a little hyperbolic, but it is the future of infrastructure. It writes its own rules, tests its own rules, deploys its own rules, upgrades itself. Like, wow.
Yeah.
And so while it's young, we've got 20 going on 30 customers actually running it. And we're integrating it into the fabric of the network. And so expect to see in the next few months even more Hypershield. And I think it really is a glimpse of tomorrow today.
And very simply, for people that maybe aren't familiar with Hypershield, you've just taken Firewall and you've embedded it everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you think that would have been possible without the era we're in now with AI?
It's the three components we talked about, the chips, the software, and the AI management. And we didn't just take the firewall that you know and love today. We completely redefined how a firewall works, right? It's all based on identity.
Yeah.
It understands the applications that are running, and it looks at each individual software process and says, does this make sense? So very, very fine-grained controls. You couldn't possibly write policies the old way for that level of granularity, but with AI, we do it in a way that delivers better security outcomes with less effort.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like you. I was a network engineer, and so segmentation was hard. It was incredibly difficult.
Yep, we've all worked on that.
The way that Hypershield does segmentation and in regards to how it understands flows, the way that you're able to use the digital twin to patch, the way you're able to be efficient when you do upgrades and know things have been tested. We've all been through the digital resilience pain of the past. I do think it's a game changer, and it will be a game changer in this part of the world.
All right. Well, Dave and Tom, thanks for joining me. And I just want to close by saying, AI is the biggest fundamental change we've had in IT, certainly in my career. And when you look at some of the other transformations we've had, cloud, mobile, that caused us to rethink the way we run IT, the way we build IT, and the way we operate it. And I don't see this any different. And so I think if you're
it is different. It's faster.
Right. I do agree with that.
And more secure.
Well, I do think the transition happens faster.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this, I think it's incredibly important that you embrace the concept of AI, but you have to rethink how you operate and run IT, and doing things, trying to do best of breed and in one-off ways just isn't going to scale anymore.
I agree.
So with that, let's return to the studio. All right, everyone, that wraps up the ZKast. Thanks for watching. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on my next episode of ZKast.